Hi guys, it's Tace, and today I'm starting a new series where I talk about shoddily made games. And no, I'm not talking about...
I just can't relate to any of the characters. I hate women and minorities.
No, those aren't the people that I'm talking about. I'm talking about genuinely bad games. Like, unplayable games. All negative reviews on Steam, physics completely bugged out, that kind of thing. And the reason I've decided to start making these videos is because, as a game developer myself, I think it's really important that we point and laugh at really bad games, because otherwise we would just cry. So, without further ado, let's get on with the video. So, the game that we're going to be looking at today is called Bloody Boobs, and yes, that is exactly what it sounds like. A recipe for being shadow banned on YouTube. It claims to be a survival horror game, but I'm gonna be real with you here, I don't think that's why people are purchasing it. It's been taken off the Steam store for a while now, so you can't really purchase it anyway, but lucky me, I played the game back in 2018 with my mates for no good reason at all, other than it was cheap, and I was really bored. At least that's how I justify spending that money. So, I'm gonna be straight with you, this game is shit. And I don't say it because of the boobs, because I love boobs. But it also just plays badly. The first thing you notice when you start up the game is the volume, and my god, do you notice the volume? It's probably the biggest and most effective jump scare in the game, in my opinion. I mean, my ears have been blasted clean off. I'm actually speaking to you as a deaf woman right now. But at least the volume is adjustable. Now once you start the main part of the game, you enter this dungeon-like environment. At least that's what I assume that it looks like, because I can't see. The brightness levels in this game start out extremely dark, and even when you adjust it to full brightness in the menu, you still have to squint to see. I've actually had to adjust the brightness in post as well, so that you guys can actually look at what I'm looking at. And this is something that really frustrates me as a game developer, because it's so important that you set up your brightness correctly, especially in a horror game. And I get this is a joke horror game, but it's very difficult to see the ha-ha naked women funny jokes if, well, you can't fucking see. I mean, why do you think most horror games have that stupid we adjust the brightness until you can barely see the logo screens? If the brightness is off, then the tension goes out the window, and your game ends up being, well, best case scenario a bit boring, and worst case scenario completely unplayable. And it's not like it's really that hard to implement brightness as a developer. Like, I'm gonna link a 3-minute tutorial on how to change brightness in Unity, just to prove my point that it's not that hard. It takes 3 minutes, and it shouldn't be a problem, because you want to improve user experience. And even with all of that aside, the controls are extremely janky, and I don't know whether this is how big-breasted hot Russian women walk in real life, because I personally am not a big-breasted hot Russian woman, but if they do walk like this, like, you okay? At least the boobs are animated correctly, I guess, and to be honest, that's all you need in a game, you know? Well-animated boobs. Fuck the gameplay. And the worst part about it is, this is pretty much the only redeeming feature of this game, and I can't show it because YouTube community standards. So you might have noticed, but the first 5 minutes of this video have just been me talking about the very basic problems I have with the game. So what about if we look at the more fundamental gameplay and concept problems? There are several slightly more complex design-based problems, and almost all of those problems I can't tell whether it's because the game is meant to be a joke, or if it's just straight up lazy developing. I sort of lean towards the lazy developing side, but even if it's meant to be a joke, just because gameplay is bad doesn't make it funny. Joke games need to actually have good gameplay or original content, or it just plays as a bad game. A good example of a janky game with actually funny content is Surgeon Simulator. Sure, the controls feel super weird since you're made to control each individual finger using your keyboard and mouse, which isn't that practical, but it's implemented in a way that makes it funny. The sheer absurdity of being expected to operate on a human being with one hand and no pressure control makes Surgeon Simulator unique, interesting, and quirky, whereas the absurd concepts in this game make it seem tacky, janky, and frankly unfunny. I honestly feel like Bloody Boobs tried to grasp at the same kind of absurdity that Surgeon Simulator did, but completely failed to execute the game properly, whether it's due to laziness or just a lack of imagination. And this is really evident in simple things like these weird audio cues that play every 5 seconds.
It's just me, or the sound of these headless things clicking on the floor sounds like two guys were scraping stars in a metal suitcase in a sound recording studio.
Which are really obviously poor attempts to try to make the game look like a joke, but the jokes just come off as kind of flat. Now, I can't really fault them for flat jokes because I tell them literally all the time, but it really does just illustrate to me how hard the developer of this was trying to be quirky and funny without much regard for how the game would actually turn out. Developers like this kind of remind me of, that one girl we all knew in high school that said, "I'm not like other girls, I'm one of the boys, I'm not like other developers, I make meme games to be funny." But they always push it way too far, which ends up pushing other developers away, makes it look like they're trying too hard, and completely removes the personality from any games that they might make if they don't execute it well. The other thing that these random audio cues illustrate is the complete lack of storyline this game has. It's really obviously meant to be breaking the third wall to almost acknowledge that this game has no storyline as part of the whole joke, but all it does is bring attention to it. It doesn't excuse the fact that there's no lore. And don't get me wrong, I don't need complex lore. I don't want this game to be the next Elder Scrolls, but some context would be good. I mean, all we're really given here is, here's some boobs, here's a dungeon environment, here's some monsters, go find some penises. Which I guess lives up to the name Bloody Boobs, but really though, there's no context on how we got there, what the altars mean, why we've been trapped in a seemingly inescapable dungeon, and why there are monsters trying to kill us. Can we also talk about the metaphor behind the penis altars, by the way? It's so thinly veiled. I am woman. I wear no clothes. I want penis statues. I wonder what that's about, buddy. I really have absolutely no idea. Then on top of this really beautiful, in-depth lore, the fear in this game is completely jump scare based, which is one of my biggest pet peeves in any horror game. If I'm honest as well, the jump scare isn't the content on the screen, but instead it's how suddenly you're hit by the fight audio. You'll just be vibing, walking about, trying to find an altar, and then the music will hit you out of absolutely nowhere and scare you half to death, and you won't figure out where it's coming from until about 30 seconds later, when a B-Tech werewolf or a large headless spider decides to come and attack you. Which, by the way, you're never instructed on how to get away or defeat these monsters, or even why they're there. I had to look up what to do to avoid these monsters, and I found only 2 ways that you can avoid them. You either hide, or you use a landmine. Now here's the problem I have with this mechanic. As a mechanic by itself, it's not that bad, it's pretty average for a horror game, but if you put it into practice, you actually need to implement places for the character to hide. And newsflash, there isn't one in this game. On top of this, in my time playing the game, I didn't actually find a single landmine because apparently they're rare. So what do you do when a monster attacks you? There really isn't anything you can do except run and take the hits. But this doesn't work either because you can't really outrun the monsters and your health doesn't restore automatically between encounters. So all you can really do is die. And man, from experience with games, dying even when the death is fair is really irritating. Never mind if there's literally nothing that the user can do to stop dying. This, I think, in short, is really what makes the game unplayable. Not the janky controls, not the weird audio cues, not the stupid storyline, but the balancing of the gameplay is just unbearable. All you can do is continuously throw yourself at the game and hope for the best, which isn't helped by the fact that there's no guideline or map for how you should be searching for these altars, or what they look like even. You know, a player has to look up things just to use the very basic mechanics of the game, which is absolutely absurd. Now, I couldn't be asked to finish the game, and I think for pretty obvious reasons, but you'd think after all of that, you might have some kind of satisfying ending, right? You know, an explanation as to why you did this maybe, or a Steam achievement, right? Absolutely not. All you get are some boobs, and not even naked ones, may I add. They just have shells on them and no blood, which defeats the whole purpose of the name Bloody Boobs. We're given completely clean boobs with no actual scars or anything on them, so arguably the screensavers you get on the loading screens are better than the screensaver that you get if you actually win. There's no sense of achievement when you win this game, it's just emptiness. And this is just another thing to add on to the list of disappointments in this game. Like, it's just every single part of this game screams lazy developing. Even the multiplayer mode, which you'd expect would be slightly different, is exactly the same. The only thing that changes is you can customize yourself, I guess. And that's pretty good. I'll give them that. That's enjoyable that you can customize yourself. But you'd think that they would put that in single player and multiplayer. And the fact that that's the best part of this game says a lot about the game. In conclusion, this game is just really bad and lazy. I thought this back in 2018 when I first played it, and playing it again in 2020 solidified that thought. But at the end of the day, this is just my opinion. And that's all this series is going to be, my opinion. So if you want to see more, make sure to click the like and subscribe and comment what games you want me to do next. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!